Okay, we're going to take some time to talk about writing the lit review, which is one of the uh, three key things you're going to have to get done this semester. I know that most of y'all probably did this in your master's degree, and certainly if you did that through MSU, the format is pretty much the same in terms of our expectations. Um, and after this, I'll also post a video about what really is involved in the whole dissertation and practice paper. But because you're dealing with two things, you're dealing not only with the lit review you need for this class, but also the lit review that you need for the dissertation practice. So I kind of want to go over what's expected. So right now, you're in the process of selecting the topic, and you really do need to, well, when we meet February 6th, we're trying to narrow this down and get some very specific questions, but there's nothing wrong with looking right now about what you want to do. You have to find something that you're interested in, something that is uh, reasonable. You're in theory are going to start this now and finish it later. And what may happen is after the end of this semester, whatever topic you thought that you wanted to do, after you do a lit review, you discover there's absolutely no information on this or there's not anything useful from this, and you may have to ditch it. Or you may find that it is exactly what you want, and as you continue to move through the program, you can expand on that and you can keep adding to it and adding different aspects to it. That's up to you. We really do need to focus on something this semester that allows you to complete the requirements for this course. But preferably we wouldn't want that to be a waste of time. So this is not a proof. One of the mistakes that people make is they get in their mind, I want to prove that so-and-so has whatever product they have, whatever intervention they have, it makes a difference. When you say those words, you've already made a mistake. You're already biased in what you're searching for. You're just setting out to conduct an investigation. If you find that what you did doesn't make a difference, that's okay. It's really important in our line of work that we just figure out what works and what doesn't work. That has as much value as anything else. So we want to begin with a general topic and narrow down to a very specific question, which, as I said, we'll take care of February 6th. And on that day, when we're together in the lab, we can really go through some exercises of this using the databases that we have available to help you find that. As I said, some of you may be familiar with that, but I just want to make sure everybody's on the same page. The specificity of your question is really necessary in getting this done. The best place that I've found is Academic Search, and that is a website that's available through MSU Texas. And you really need to look at primary sources and then literature review articles. And here's why I want you looking at primary sources is if you use somebody else's literature review. So for example, let's say you're doing something about sense of belonging and you came across a dissertation about sense of belonging in middle schools in Texas, and you read through this poorly written dissertation. What you would discover is that this researcher, again, that all look familiar, had already read quite a bit of information about sense of belonging, why there's a problem, the questions associated with it. Here's the downside of doing that. So for example, I wrote this based upon what Goodnow did. It's possible that I didn't know what I was talking about. So if you depend upon somebody else's literature review, you're taking you've taken a primary study. It has gone through the filter of somebody else who may or may not know what they're doing, and you're assuming that their interpretation of that data is correct. That's risky for you. I think that the best reason to use these literature reviews is a way to find original sources for you to use in yours. You want primary sources in yours. You want recent things, no more than 5 to 8 years old, because data changes so quickly, unless it's really as a landmark or classic study. And that doesn't mean that you can't put something in there from Rick DeFore or something like that. If there's some landmark case or landmark research that goes into this to give us some background, that's okay. But when you're trying to explain why this is a problem or what the solutions are, you really need the primary sources. You want something reasonable, you want something doable. Your goal, there's two goals in this. Your primary goal is to finish the dissertation. Your secondary goal is to see if what you did made a difference. You have to save your world, save you first. You can save the world later. This is really about learning the process. We are teaching you a process. We're giving you a set of tools that hopefully you can use in your career moving forward. We want you to learn what's acceptable, what's unacceptable, what's good research, what's bad research. That outweighs what you actually learn in your investigation. So pick something reasonable, pick something that's doable. And as we're going to go through long processes trying to narrow down what's going to work for this. And we're going to have to work with school districts on this to make that work out. So why are we doing this? What is the purpose of the Lit Review? Well, this is supposed to be a synthesis of what we know about a topic, not a review of researchers. And what I mean about that is I want to again show you a bad example. I think that by and large, most people, and I used to do this too, write like this. See, here's this author, and then this is everything that I found from that author. Here's this author, and what I found from that author. Here's this author, and what I found from that. So what you find is seems to be more about these authors than what it is that they found. The only reason that the names ought to be there is we have to give credit to people for what they do. We want you to develop a literature review that really synthesizes what we know about the topic. What we don't want is a master's level, or in my case, a doctoral level series of paragraphs that are just lifted from other articles. That's a very difficult challenge for a lot of people. And I know that that's true. And that's why we're going through this, is to help you stop that process. We never want to use opinions. Every once in a while we'll have people who will get newspaper articles or articles that are not peer reviewed. We're not using those. Because if we don't have the evidence that even suggests that what we're talking about might be true or may not be true, then it really is no value to us. Well, this isn't about a collection of opinions. It's a collection of research. You want to be able to make a case for why your topic is valuable and being very specific. Tell us what is known about your topic. If you have parts to your question, which you do, you need to explain why those parts are valuable. For example, in mine, I had a study on a sense of belonging in middle school. So I had to explain what sense of belonging was and how they knew what that was, what sense of belonging meant for kids, and what impact sense of belonging might have had on what happens in schools, specifically middle schools. There became pieces of that dissertation. I'm going to post the dissertation in the module so you can look at how that's organized. There's different ways to organize it, and this probably is brought up in the book. It can be chronological, thematic, general to specific. Really, yours probably is going to be thematic because you're trying to explain parts of your research questions. It needs to be thorough. You do not need to use quotes. You're allowed one or two, maybe. Here's why. I have people at the master's level who will turn in papers that are nearly all quotes. Well, what that means is that person didn't do any work. They have nothing original to say. All they can do is pick up pieces of other articles and try to stick those together. Well, that didn't tell me anything, and it also means you didn't do anything. So you need to actually read the articles. And what that means is you really have to read the middle part. Very often people just want to take the abstract and use that. That's not where the most important part of an article is. The most important part is in the methodology and the results, not the lit review, not the abstract. It needs to be relevant as much as you can. And sometimes you may end up with a topic that doesn't necessarily align well. And we'll talk about what to do when that happens. It can happen. There's a way to make a connection. If you can't find exactly what you're looking for example, I was interested in sense of belonging in middle school, and all I could find was sense of belonging in high school, well, then I can make a case for this is what we know about high school, and therefore the question is, what about middle school? You need to be careful about plagiarism, which means what you write needs to be different enough from what it came from that is your original work. People get caught, and I think it's really unintentionally, about plagiarism by thinking that as long as they cite somebody else, they hadn't committed plagiarism. That's not true, because if you are using somebody else's words and it looks just like it was organized in the other place, and all you did was give them credit, that's still plagiarism because you took their words and are presenting as yours as a whole. You need to read it and write in an original format. Don't simply just lift the literature, place it in your review. Think about how it's organized and how the pieces fit together. We already went over primary sources. We're doing APA 7th edition. APA counts. You don't have to have the book. You can find a lot of the information that you need online. But when I read it, I'm going to use an APA manual to evaluate what you're doing. How you write is also very important. And this is the other place that I see people struggling. It is how we make the subject, and how we avoid writing in passive voice. We want to write in active voice. So here is a question, or here's a statement. We use a structural equation to test the model. The correct way to do that, and what we're doing in this class, is a structural equation was used to test the model. We want to avoid I, we, me, you, any of those words like that. It needs to be written like this, where there is no personalization to it. The other thing is avoiding passive voice, writing in active voice, and trying to avoid these words. And I've got another exercise we're going to go through to that end. Most people write like this. They put, there are a couch and table in the room. People write like that because people speak like that. Really, the appropriate way to write that is this: a couch and a coffee table are in the room. They're both okay, but this one, for what we're doing, sounds better than the other. If you were telling me there personally, as we were speaking, there's a couch and a table in the room, that would be fine. But really, when you're writing, it ought to look like this. So that's kind of an overview of what we need to do for the literature review. There's some other things I'm going to post related to this, and there's some exercises that we're going to use Google Sheets on to see if we can get better at how we write.